Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt.
I'm Eric.
And this week we are diving into the world of spy drama and relationship drama, as it happens to be, with Steven Soderbergh's latest film, Black Bag. This one, an all-star cast, but basically centers on Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, who play married British spies. It takes place over the course of just about a week. It begins with Michael Fassbender learning that a big piece of technology has been stolen from his spy agency, and there are 5 potential suspects, one of whom is his wife. Leads to a fascinating dinner party with he and his wife and 4 others who happen to be in 2 couples that work with them, a couple of spies, a psychologist, and a low-level analyst. And we follow as the games play out over the course of a week. This one written by David Koepp, who has done a lot of interesting scripts, wrote a favorite of mine, The Paper, which was a 1994 journalism film. He also worked on the script for Tobey Maguire's original Spider-Man, and you have to classify it because there have been like 95 different Spider-Men since 2000, so that's just a rough estimate. I was excited to roll into this one. I loved it. I love the crisp dialogue. I love the performances. I love the back and forth. This is my first 4-star film of 2025. I'm definitely giving it a solid thumbs up. Right now, it is still my number one. Granted, it's early, but at this time last year, we had already seen Dune Part 2. I felt like we were really slow rolling 2025, so I was thrilled to get to see Black Bag. How did you feel about this one?
I enjoyed it. And like another movie that we're going to talk about, it was very interesting to see such a small, contained story about something that could be, apocalyptic for thousands of people. It was clever. It was sharp. It was well directed. I was a little annoyed at everything being like the exposure, so that all of the lights are kind of bleeding into everything. But
It's a choice.
I enjoyed it. I am one thumb up on it. I'm not the strongest thumb up on it. I feel like if I watched this again, I would be able to follow things a little bit more competently. But I feel like I get what happened, and it was satisfying enough to follow, to enjoy the performances. So all that sounds very vague. I mean, but it's a very contained, very. It doesn't feel like this grand, big operatic mystery or anything like that. It doesn't feel like the stakes are the end of the world, and that's kind of nice to have. But it also kind of like makes you feel like you have to dive into this world of this company and these people and their lives and understand how they feel and operate and get invested enough to follow and care about what they're doing just in time for them to resolve everything and it's over. So
I do think, you bring up something. I think if you're a fan of the spy genre, these kind of spy stories, this is well done in a way that'll really stand out to you. I liked some of the choices Soderbergh made with different shots and POV and the way you were following people. And I liked some of the back and forth interpersonal dynamics. Fassbender and Blanchett are great in all their scenes together, but I really enjoyed Marissa Avila here. Especially her lie detector scene. And the whole way they intercut that lie detector sequence, I thought was really fascinating, gripping, and engaging.
Yeah.
To get to that dinner sequence where you're trying to guess who it's going to be, I just that's my kind of movie, probably. These kind of like spy thrillers, I've watched them a lot of times and they stand out to me. And while I say it is my number one right now so far, I would not be shocked if this doesn't end up top 10 for the year. I just thought it was really well done for that. I mean, we're early and
yeah,
I liked it. and it's probably more a commentary on I haven't super liked anything. I've
Yeah, yeah.
enjoyed some of the movies we've had so far this year, and I enjoyed this one quite a bit for the
That's
ride
cool.
that it is. But we're still early days.
It is a ride.
Yeah, it is a ride. But I thought they made the most of their cast. Regé Jean Page. I mostly recognize him from that Netflix.
Oh, Dungeons and Dragons for me.
Oh yeah, I forgot he was in Dungeons and Dragons. That one was good too. Bridgerton is what I was
Bridgerton.
thinking. And Naomi Harris, I've liked her in a lot of different things. I thought Tom Burke was really solid. They did a good job casting there. You have kind of a fun role for Pierce Brosnan too, who pops up in a couple of spots. But Michael Fassbender seems to be in his spy phase because he just did The Agency for CBS or for Paramount Plus, which wrapped its first season. He's a British spy, or he's an American spy in England in that one. Here, he's just a British spy in England. So maybe he just wants to stay in London, doesn't want to have to move around. Now he's like, I'll take whatever jobs you have.
I always say that his role as Magneto are always little James Bond subplot movies in those, and like they're always some sort of espionage secret mission. Like I'm gonna go take out this guy wearing a dark turtleneck on a submarine. Like
there was just
some about him in the spy scene works really well.
Yeah, and I think part of what works for me, I liked some of the clever dialogue because usually these movies are pretty, they're a little quieter and more self-contained. You have a lot of people talking in rooms, talking, trying to one up each other, trying to deduce things. It does make me curious. So basically, David Koepp wrote back-to-back films that were directed by Soderbergh. I did not get a chance to see Presence during the week and a half it was in theaters in January. So I'm curious to see how I'll feel about that. This was the second half of it, Black Bag. They kind of did them back-to-back, written, directed. So I'm curious to see Presence a little bit more now than maybe I was before.
Okay.
The other new movie that we were going to talk about this week is one that is on the streaming, and that is the Max original, The Parenting, which is described as a horror comedy. I think I described it in my review is, have you ever watched Meet the Parents and thought, this would be a lot better if it was more like The Exorcist? And if that is you, then The Parenting is probably for you. Kent Sublett is the writer here, who has worked on Saturday Night Live and some other. I think he was a writer for one of the Correspondence Dinners, and so you kind of get a feel for that kind of comedy. Pretty good cast here, I will say. I thought the story was interesting. I didn't love this one as much. I'm giving it a mild thumbs up, but the standouts for me, Brian Cox, who, spoiler alert, ends up being the one who gets possessed.
He just
they
went
had
for
him
it.
say and do were incredible, and the movie really picked up for me when you get into the end of the second and third acts, and you get a lot more Parker Posey. You get a snippet of her in the beginning, but Parker Posey and Brian Cox really, that's what got it to a thumb up for me. I liked the basic idea and premise, and it was executed pretty well, but that wild finish really did make me laugh.
One of my favorite things in this movie is I agree with Brian Cox, Parker Posey sticking out. I enjoyed all of the main cast playing just distinct characters. And again, this is a movie that very quickly, it's like they meet, they're nervous that the parents are coming, they meet one of the parents, they meet some of the parents, they all eat dinner together, and then boom, someone gets, possessed, and you have a couple of scenes with possession, and then the movie's almost over and they go see Parker Posey. It's very quick. It's very short, simple story about potentially a world altering, like, big consequential thing. It's but the thing, there's this one moment that just got me to where I was just like fully sold on this, and it is strong thumb up. Well, mild to strong thumb up for me. We need like a gradient. We need a scale between here and here.
Yeah, it's like the 60-degree thumb.
Yeah.
We're not quite to 90, guys.
Edie or Eddie Falco, the plays the mom Sharon, Rowan's mom. It goes to bring Brian Cox this bowl of what they call crazy noodles, and when she kind of falls asleep and wakes up, she realizes the noodles have been eaten, and she's like, Brian Cox must have eaten the noodles. It's like, okay. And then Brian Cox has his I am from The Exorcist moment where he spouts just an endless, gargantuan, almost full 60 seconds of solid vomit of noodles. And for some reason, even though Sharon has been the one so far to say, like, you guys, what you're saying is not possible, possession isn't real, this and that, or whatever, what finally snaps and gets her is the volume of the noodles is so much more than what was in that bowl. There's no way that's my husband. We have to kill him. Like, it was, I was like, why would
also like the recurring as a possessed man, Brian Cox makes so many comments about penis size, both his own
oh my gosh,
and others, and then it comes back at the end in like the most hilarious ways. They do a nice job, that's the awkward, meet the parents trying to make an impression, not going well. How do you save it? And then you throw a demon possession in there. It really did remind me of the craziest mashup of like Meet the Parents. You go from like an awkward scene similar to talking about milking a cat to just projectile vomiting and seances and some ghosts.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a fine job with that. For these, I think you do need some of those more outsized characters, and they had some really talented and funny people, but I think that's probably why Brian Cox and Parker Posey stand out, is they were the only ones that really understood the assignment and went with
all
these
out.
Really outlandish characters. The other ones felt a little too grounded. Even I thought when they called in their friend, she was going to be a little more wacky,
Vivian
but
Bang,
it just didn't quite materialize. And they didn't explain the ghosts quite enough.
Right.
And you didn't have enough time
until the end.
It's a 95-minute movie, but you spend like the first 50 minutes kind of awkwardly dancing around, and then it's like wham bam, in 15 minutes we need to explain everything so that we can get to this dramatic conclusion and save 5 or 10 minutes for a happy ending.
That's what the structure feels like. And as a result, there are a lot of characters that ended up feeling they didn't really do much of anything of consequence.
And didn't really have enough. And that's probably why you don't get enough feel for Dean Norris and Lisa Kudrow. Are very talented, but you don't spend really enough time with them. There are some funny sequences, like when both sets of parents and the couple are in bed and they just hear this banging, and everyone somebody else is having like a wild sex night. But they didn't have time to really even play off that joke, because Brian Cox shows up possessed and in the buff like right away after that, and it's
that face.
Then you're off, on his face. Then you're off to the races
with the makeup that they put on him.
Dad, did you forget something this morning? I don't know if that's the subtlety.
Look at that.
So before we move on to check in on our favorite TV shows, I forgot this last week, but I am not going to forget our game. So this clue that I will let you sit with while we talk about our shows: a photographer scams the editor-in-chief of a local newspaper. So I'll let you sit with that. Probably that's about as clear as our final check-in with Severance. Cold Harbor dropped this week, the finale of season 2. I think I had noted I was a little on the fence about the lack of what felt like forward momentum in episode 9. We definitely got some forward momentum, some good emotional sequences here with Cold Harbor. I thought there was a beautiful Audi, Mark, and Gemma reunion. There was beautiful Innie, Mark, and Helly sequences. I thought there was a real redemptive arc for Dylan. We got to see some just outright crazy dancing from Mr. Bilchik and a marching band, which I didn't even know was a bucket list item that I needed desperately in my life. Some weird sequences. We got a great, I'm just going to call her Brienne of Tarth because I don't remember. I don't know if they ever gave her a character name.
Yeah.
Protecting in service of the cutest little baby goat. We got some wild, crazy stuff. And all of it leaves in kind of a deeply emotional, open-ended way. It was picked up for a 3rd season on Friday. I saw some people saying that they wish this had been the end. Which I guess I can kind of see that because I don't know if there's ever going to be a satisfying way to end this romance triangle exactly. And but I think you and I have some of the same concerns, and that is, as fans of mystery box series that we've watched over the years, there's often a point in time in the early to middle run where you love the potential of everything and they've built up the characters and they've built up potential, but a lot of it hinges on, we have questions. Where is this going? What are these things? My greatest fear is that no one at this point in time actually has the answers. I mentioned in our pre-show discussion, feels a little bit like Lost, 2nd, 3rd, 4th season just felt incredible. And then they're like, yeah, we know where we're going. We have a defined ending. And after kind of a rough final couple of seasons when they did interviews, it was really came down to they were reading message boards and they didn't totally know where they were going.
Yeah.
They started putting things together and it ended up, to me, it wasn't, I don't dislike the finales, the final season as much as some, but it definitely felt like something of a letdown. We saw that even with Game of Thrones, where just so many beautiful possibilities that got distilled into
we have to
possibility.
We have to try and know to like let a lot of things go. We know that it just got greenlit on Friday, so we know that this ending was made and filmed maybe on the hope that they would get to make another season, but not on a written other season. And you don't know how many people who are on the writing team are still going to be on the same writing team and who's going to be doing different shows and whatnot. And there are no guarantees that even if there is an idea of a show they want to make, that they're going to get to make that idea of the show. And also, if they continue to get greenlit and they want to continue to drag the show on, they're going to have to come up with reasons to continue to drag the show on, unless they do something like The Good Place and they say, sorry, we're only making this intentionally to 4 seasons in order to, get a point across. Like, in the stay behind after scenes for a look inside the episode thing this time, they talked about the marching band, and one of the producers talked about, oh yeah, we were talking about how are they going to celebrate Mark's Cold Harbor, what is Lumen going to do to celebrate, and then someone in the writing room said, what about a marching band? And as soon as someone said that, we were like, oh, that has to be it. And that caught my attention a lot, because the insight we're getting into the writer's room is that there is no secret unknown function of Lumen. The Department of CNM, something in Merriment.
Yeah.
That department wasn't, maybe they were in charge of the waffle party. Maybe they are a thing. There are resources that people use, but the function of the marching band wasn't something that was thought through as like, oh, well, there always was this department of people that are like a marching band, and they work on the severed floor and they just learn marching band day in and day out, and like that's part of Lumen's important work. No, someone just had an idea for it, and they have this very vague.
Is it celebration and merriment?
Yeah,
Oh,
probably
choreography and
choreography and merriment.
merriment.
And like, so it's not, I very solidly believe there is no purpose for choreography and merriment other than to have this marching band work for this scene. And then if they come up with it later, they come up with it later. The same thing is apparently true about the goats. One of the writers has been talking about how people put a lot of stock and information in the goats, and the goats apparently originally were just an idea of something weird that could be going on behind the scenes that people had that didn't originally have a backstory or an intended purpose. So maybe they have created one now that they have Gwendolyn Christie in the department that they visited and whatnot. But they made some allusion to the goats are harvested and they're guides for people's souls and this and that. And it's like, okay, if you're making it up as you go along, stop, come up with a few ideas of where you want to go and start going in that direction. Because it ends up feeling like a Game of Thrones or a Lost, where it's like, I feel like we're going to get invested in the wrong things. And then when the show ends on endings like this ending, which I thought was spectacular, you end up with issues like what I have with Gemma, where however Lumen operates is so poorly defined so that they can do what they want that I have absolutely no idea whether Gemma is free or if she's just going to get kidnapped and put right back on her floor. It's anything is completely possible with Gemma. There's no the idea I think is supposed to be, all right, he got Gemma out, now he's going to do something for himself. But there is no he got Gemma out, because we haven't even been up that stairwell to see where in Lumen it goes and if it stays outside the building or where Miss Casey is or where Devin is or anything. So, and then you have Mr. Drummond, the Captain Bad Guy, who suddenly wants to murder employees that are acting out, even though that means their outies will disappear in the outside world and Lumen will be under investigation. Like, he doesn't seem like someone who was at the end of his rope. Mr. Milchick gave him attitude, but Cold Harbor is finished. I don't see how murder is at all good for or part of the cause here. So he seems suddenly, even though he's so practiced and stable and imposing and like careful and like you need to follow procedure and protocol, he just goes wild. And I have no idea how and why it makes sense for him to be that way. So everything about Mark, great. Everything about Gemma, everything about Miss Cobell, and like everything, great. I'm 100% on board with the ideas and where they're going to go, and this idea that they're on the severed floor and the outies want to get him and he doesn't want to be found. But you got to start defining Lumen in order for us to understand and care what the stakes are for the characters.
Yeah, well, they do have, so Dan Erickson, who's the creator, has been probably the one consistent piece of the writers group, because I was just looking at it, when you were mentioning you don't know, Dan Erickson is the creator and has been attached to the show the whole time and has written several episodes in each of the seasons, including premieres and finales in each of the seasons. But there's really looks like only one other writer who's even crossed over into both seasons, which is interesting. I know they brought on Bo Willimon as an executive producer in season 2, who's supposed to be staying and being part of the writing staff for a future season. He worked on House of Cards and Andor. the film Ides of March. So we'll see where they go. They did just announce on Friday that it was renewed for a third season. I don't know that that means that that's when they found out. I think they've known what they were going to do for a little while. But I do think the second season finale, a lot of shows will make, especially these kind of mystery box shows, they'll make something that's open ended enough for them to continue, but also resolved enough that if it would have ended,
Yeah.
you wouldn't feel like, like if it had ended when the elevator opened and Audi Mark was stepping onto the floor to look for Gemma, then you'd be like, if this is the end, I'm burning Apple to the ground.
Yeah. They
So
did. They took it to a
or
solid
if they
place.
would have ended, with, I actually kind of think they should have ended with Mark in the hallway between the two women.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, to me, the interesting thing is not whether any Mark chooses between the two women. To me, the interesting thing is whether a reintegrated Mark chooses between the two women.
Yeah.
And it just looks like the show is not interested in going that direction. So it looks like it's Audi versus
they
any Mark.
tried to give you, they tried, but that's kind of how it was at the beginning when you have that Mark talking to Mark through the camera. They were kind of at odds. And I think they tried to give you these satisfying emotional moments of both Mark reuniting with his wife Gemma, which was a beautiful moment, and when Mark is finishing Cold Harbor, there were a lot of beautiful moments there when they send the final file in together, and then the lasting final scene. I wonder, we had wondered after last week, are we done with John Turturro and Christopher Walken? I have a feeling we are.
I don't think so. If everyone on the severed floor is stuck on the severed floor, then the only one who knows what goes on the severed floor that's not Miss Cobell is Irving. So as far as understanding where to go and what was happening most recently, the resource that Gemma and Miss Cobell and Devin has, like I can see a world where they need Irving.
Yeah.
And they probably need Bert to get to Irving. So
Bert and Irving is too close
to Bert and Ernie.
Well, let's just hope we don't have 3 more years before we find out.
Yeah.
Because they announced the third season, but they didn't announce how quickly. I would. Most of these shows gap at least 1 year.
Yeah, and don't rush it. I don't want them to rush it.
27 at the earliest.
Yeah, like I'm
That's
completely
what makes
cool.
The Bear such a rare gift. It drops in June every year.
Yeah,
they know what they're doing. They drop 10 episodes. They're emotionally devastating. I'm waiting to have my summer get ruined again. Not ruin's the wrong word, but
yeah,
pull them down, take them on my Disney cruise.
Devastated. Yeah.
There was another show that had a pretty fine episode this week, and that is Daredevil Born Again. This one, the aftermath of what was a deeply emotional episode 3. We did get to see Frank Castle as played by John Bernthal, and I thought that was a richly incredible sequence. This episode really felt like two men, both Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk, who are struggling to find their better nature and falling short. You see Matt on the roof at the end, making sure his skills with, I'm not even sure what that weapon is called, are sharp, and checking out. We thought, he lost his mask. No, he had 20 squares, so he's good to go.
I thought he was gonna get those made in the show later. I didn't think he was gonna be like, my shrine already exists.
Fisk down there menacingly eating a sausage. Well, while keeping a man in chains.
Yeah.
We're coming to a reckoning. We're probably about midway through this first batch of 9 episodes. This was episode 4. I still like the courtroom drama aspects of it all. The lawyer aspects are doing pretty well, but a lot of interesting character movement and some interesting back and forth. What are you thinking about this week's Daredevil Born Again?
I friggin' love Daredevil, and this is 100% pure grade, straight Daredevil shot directly into my veins. Sorry for drag references, but like one of the most fascinating things about this episode to me was Matt Murdock taking his public case and having the conversation with that guy who keeps getting arrested, because Nelson and Murdock in the comics are always the people who are taking the pro bono cases and taking the people who are in desperate need of help. It is very rare that Daredevil has to be an attorney for someone who isn't just like desperate and super grateful to have any help at all, to deal with the realities of a case like that, and to be so unapologetically in your face about I have had clients who have had issues where they lapse on a drug court program, and their sanction, their punishment for lapsing is going to jail. And if they go to jail for longer than 30 days, they've lost Social Security, and it has taken 2.5 years to have their not 30 days. The case that I'm thinking of, someone on a drug possession charge went to jail for 1 year, and because of 1 year lost their disability benefits and spent 2.5 years trying to reapply for the system, and they weren't willing to take old x-rays and old proof that a person had this back injury that they were having to live with. And it wasn't until it was too late for them medically to fix a problem that happened that we had reinstated his Medicaid, and he was going to get all of his back pay, and he was going to get all of this stuff. But it was too late. Dude passed away. And it's just like, to see someone talk so much about, like, call out the system for spending more money disciplining people than what the actual crime is worth. And like, I don't know. It was easy for me to feel for the guy, and it's so good to be in Daredevil's shoes. But like, I gotta tell you, one of the things about Daredevil as a character is that when he starts to get really close to a woman, like, you can almost just see a bullseye target lining up on the screen over top of their face. And it's just like, episode after episode, that target is getting closer and closer to finding its mark, and she's dead. Like, every single love interest the Daredevil, I think, mostly has ever had, except for Echo and a couple of people, they're all dead or gone. Or She-Hulk.
I don't think Echo was his love interest. She-Hulk, maybe.
No, Echo was introduced as a love interest to him in the comics.
One
of my
favorites. I thought you meant in the show. I'm like,
no. No. But I'm talking about just like, notoriously, Daredevil is this like serial monogamous. He gives his whole entire heart to a human being, and then that human being dies, and his heart dies, and then it regrows for another human being, and then it dies again. It's like Karen Page, Elektra, like, yeah, absolutely everybody. It's bizarre. So really, just every time that therapist is in the office with Fisk and Vanessa, I'm like, oh my gosh,
this is gonna end well. Well, the good news is we're getting a double dose release of Daredevil Born Again this week. Episode 5
we are
come out on Tuesday, which makes you think that there's gonna be some kind of big twist. We did get in this episode too. You don't spend a lot of time, just a couple of quick sequences of obviously another menacing figure with some red eyes carrying off a woman. That can't be good for that dude.
Nope.
So I'm guessing there's going to be a big. So episode 1 and 2 drop together. Then we had 3, 4. This week we get 5 and 6, and then 7, 8, and 9 drop in one per week through the first 3 Tuesdays in April. So 4 more weeks of Daredevil. We'll be sure to check in. By the time we check in, there will be 3 episodes that will have dropped. So I'm sure we're going to be into the home stretch. It's been pretty exciting. It looks like they're saying this back-to-back seasons is 17, so 9 this and then 8 in the second season. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Before we get into our personal recommendations, a photographer scams the editor-in-chief of a local newspaper.
All right, I gotta guess. Is it Spider-Man?
It is Spider-Man.
Yes.
I thought it was such a good one to go after Daredevil.
Yes. I was like, scams. He's not lying about his pictures. But he is like pulling off a. I couldn't remember.
Well, he's scamming that he's the greatest photographer. Yeah, when I pulled that one out, I was like, that is hilarious.
That's a really good one. I was like, Zodiac? What are you talking like what?
Zodiac,
yeah, but he's not a photographer. Like what? Okay.
Yeah, so very, very good. Well, before we get out of here, any thing you want to shout out that you've been watching recently?
Oh my gosh, my brain shut down. This happened a couple of times ago where I watched something that I really enjoyed. Never mind. Yeah, no, I'm good this week.
Well, I'm going to touch on 2 things. First, because, following up on Daredevil, we need to have this conversation, I think, for MCU. And that is a little movie dropped last week on Netflix called The Electric State. $320 million budget, a cast that, as you can see, includes Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby Brown, also in it Ke Kwan, Woody Harrelson provides some voice work. You have Alan Tudyk providing voice work. Holly Hunter is in this. Stanley Tucci is in this. Anthony Mackie provides some voice work. I know I'm forgetting some other. Rob Gronkowski is in this. Coleman Domingo is in this. Giancarlo Esposito is in this. Brian Cox does some voice work for this. It was written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who did Captain America the Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, The Avengers, Endgame, The Avengers Infinity War, and it is directed by Joe and Anthony Russo. It debuted to, I think, about 10% on Rotten Tomatoes through the first 38 reviews. It's bounced up a little bit. I don't think it's the worst movie I've ever seen, but it is not good. It is really poor. And let me give you another list. These are the post-Endgame films made by Joe and Anthony Russo. The Electric State, which they did that show for Prime Video that was the most expensive show Prime Video had ever done, called The Citadel, which is a spy series that if you've seen, you probably don't remember, and that is a statement on its quality. They did a Chris Evans kind of spy action film called The Gray Man for Netflix, and they had a Tom Hollander film based on a popular novel called Cherry for Apple TV Plus. And
right.
If none of those stand out to you, that is because none of them were good. And this is your team, writers and director, who have the salvation of the MCU in their hands right now, doing Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. And I know people like to say this team never has missed with the MCU, but it's been nothing but misses since Endgame. And honestly, I feel like the MCU is in a radically different spot right now and has a radically higher bar and higher task that has to be cleared for these Avengers films than it was when we were in Infinity War and Endgame and everything was riding high and you had a decade of exciting stories being put together and now, our biggest probably heroes, Chadwick Boseman, unfortunately passed away. He's not coming
Mhm.
through the door, and we expect that we're going to see Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. back as villains, and not the heroic characters who really carried that first wave of MCU. I'll be honest, this makes me a little bit nervous.
Mm. Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about.
I mean, to me, I feel like it's pretty low stakes at this point because the MCU has grounded itself down to where the installments are kind of like a hit or miss. And like I love Daredevil. I really enjoy Marvel. I like them doing what they're doing. But if the movie ends up bad, I am in this weird place in my life where like what is going to change for me? Like movies are going to change. What movies money's invest their money in is going to change. And that will radically, shift like what we see as blockbusters and what do we do. But like I don't know, I guess I'm glad I don't have to make the movies.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't envy them, but I'm not gonna be too upset if they turn out to be bad. I think it's just gonna be like, oh well, I guess we got our wave of like the big arc that worked, and that's our story, and now we move on.
yeah, I guess what I find puzzling a little bit is that um, people have been really out on, and I didn't hate the Electric State as much as some, and I didn't hate Gray Man as much
Yeah.
as some. I thought Cherry was really a rough watch,
Mm.
but I also thought the Citadel was a rough watch. Um, that was a really expensive, can't miss spy thing that made you think Alias was high art.
Oh no. Well,
And it's just like I people say, oh well, you don't need to worry. Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret War are going to be epics that are emotionally riveting on the level of Endgame. It doesn't matter what they do outside of that. It might, you know, George Lucas gave us A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, but then he gave us The Phantom Menace. So,
mm,
uh, you know, returning to your franchise where you had your biggest glory is not a guarantee that
that's true.
everything turns out to be okay.
Yep.
The other movie that this one is streaming on Hulu. It's called Odessa. Is a dystopic, futuristic, weird movie musical. I have mixed feelings about this one. It dropped on Thursday. Sadie Sink is the lead here. Does an incredible job, and I really liked the original music in this.
Hmm.
I liked some of the look and feel and some of the idea, but it was also really weird.
Cool.
So, if you're
Weird.
looking for something a little bit different, a lot of colors. I really liked the original songs. I liked her a lot in the lead role. Something for you to check out there. Streaming right now on Hulu. So, if you were looking for a dystopic musical that had Sadie Sink and Murray Bartlett, who was in the first season of White Lotus, this is your jam. Well, that'll do it for us this week. We will be out next week, but we will be back on April 5th with probably a collection of catch-up things, some of the things that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So look forward to that and catching up on Daredevil and anything else that might come up. So enjoy all those episodes that come out. If it's spring break for you, enjoy a little bit of spring break time. And until then, we will see you guys at the movies.